Good evening. Remember to tell the next generation. Remember, Psalm 78 is a history psalm. It was written in a poem form so that the children could learn it and remember what happened in the past. In the introduction to this psalm, some important things are said about the value of remembering, thinking back. What happened in the past was so important that it had to be told from generation to generation. Up to 5 generations are mentioned in this psalm, verse 5 and 6. He commanded our ancestors, that's our grandfather and grandmother, to make it known to their children, our father and mother, so that the next generation, us, can know it, and the children who will be born, our children, can tell it to their children, our grandchildren. What needs to be told? Verse 4, the glorious deeds of the Lord and his power, the wonderful deeds that he has done. So it's important to ask what we should look for when we look back and remember. It's not about the ancestors and what they did. It's about looking back on what the Lord has done. His footprints, his handprints must be seen in history, and they must be passed on to the next generation. Very practically, it's important that parents retell the Bible stories to children with an emphasis on what the Lord has done. God's acts of creation, his acts of salvation, his acts of care, and even his acts of judgment, these must be noticed, and they must be told to the children. Apart from the stories of the Lord from the Bible, we each also have stories of the Lord's guidance and salvation in our own lives, and these must be told to our children and grandchildren as well. The purpose of the narratives from the past is given in verse 7. So they will trust in the Lord and not forget what he has done, but will obey what he commanded. So it even goes further than simply recounting the Lord's deeds in the past. The goal is that children will believe in the Lord, that they will trust in the Lord. Thus the narrative from the past must lead to today's generation living in trust and faith in the Lord. And of course also living in the ways of the Lord. Be obedient to the Lord. A final beautiful thought is that we've also learn from the stories for the past. We must also learn from the stories of the past not to be like our ancestors, who were, according to verse 8, rebellious and disobedient people, an unstable generation that was not faithful to God. Indeed, the narrative of history in the rest of the psalm is about the people's unfaithfulness versus the Lord's faithfulness. Here lies the gospel in looking back into the past. It's not about the people of the past, but about how the Lord, out of grace, saved sinful people in the past. The narrative is never focused on how good and perfect the people were, because they were not, but on how faithful and merciful the Lord was, because he was. It is as to say to a child, don't do what I did, please, but look beyond me to what the Lord has done. This always brings our narrative as New Testament believers back to the gospel of Jesus Christ. He came not to save perfect people and heroes from the past, but sinners like me and you. Trust in him and live in obedience to him. Good night.